We'll clean it up in post-production.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Nathan Welsh. Let's get ready to rumble. All right, welcome to Find Your Freedom podcast. Nathan Welsh, our guest today, has been a successful financial advisor for about 8 years after working a variety of gigs in numerous different industries, including a stint with the Golden State Warriors, which we'll touch on at some point during the interview today, hopefully. He has competed in bodybuilding competitions, hunted wild game, and he's a competitive archer. He now has a beautiful wife and 3 young children who keep him extremely busy. Welcome to the podcast,
Thank
Nate.
you. And we actually have a fourth on the way. So
Woo!
give the,
Whoa, dropping it here on the
yeah.
podcast.
So
Yo, yo,
moved
Congratulations.
yo,
to a gym
yo.
before a little
Welcome,
bit.
Nate. We're stoked, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Trying to get that basketball team.
Love it. That's some exciting news to start us off. So I thought we could start by talking about our internship that we did together. It was called College Works Painting. For those of you who have not heard of it, Nate and I did the internship when we were in college at UC Santa Barbara. And basically, it gives college students an opportunity to run their own business. I was in my second year with the company when Nate came on as an intern in his first year, and I remember he made an instant impression. This is a room full of very ambitious young college students, and Nate kind of stood out from the rest. He stood up and told the room about who he is and why he was doing the internship. Nate, you want to quickly share why you?
Yeah. So what Doug's alluding to is I stood up and I told everybody I wanted to buy an RV and live in it. At Santa Barbara, I was paying $850 a month for a 5x6 closet to live in. So we had 3 bedrooms with like 13 guys, and I had a 5x6 closet that just fit a bed. And I was figuring, okay, $850, 2 more years, that's 20 grand. Why not spend 11 grand on an RV, live in that? Now I have, 300 square feet of space, a 30-foot RV, and then now I actually own an asset. So that's what I did with the money from College Works. I bought an RV, I lived in it for 2 years in college, and then paid off student loans, took quite a few trips, did a hunting trip to Canada, trip to Mexico, a bunch of trips to Vegas. I was not responsible with the money at that point. When you're 20 years old and you're handed money, I paid off my debts. That was the responsible, but that was about it. I wish I could have said, yeah, I put it all in Apple and let it sit for, 20 some years, but I wasn't that responsible.
Well, it sounds like you had a little fun with the money and you did what you came to accomplish, which was buy the RV. Let's talk a little bit about what you actually did during the internship. I look back on those years as probably the most formative in my business career. I came in, didn't know really anything about business, had never worked any kind of serious jobs, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. So let's hear from you what you remember about the experience and what it kind of did to set you up in the beginning of your
That
career.
that tagline of the hardest thing I'd ever done is the whole reason why I did it. The guy came and spoke in front of our class. There's probably 800 kids, and he said, "If you want to do this, this will be the hardest thing you've ever done." And I'm always been the kind of person where if you tell me I can't do something, I just want to do it to prove you wrong. So to me, it was just that challenge alone that made me raise my hand and go check it out. Like, okay, if this is the hardest thing, let's see. Um, so that's what got me in the door. And then the work itself, it was teaching you about how to run a business. It was extremely helpful. Taught you about rejection. You found your clients by going door to door, knocking on doors, asking to paint people's houses, and you're trying to close them on the spot. So you're learning about sales, how to talk to a customer face to face, which was extremely helpful and informative for what I do now. I had I would say, relative success. I thought it went pretty well. I don't think it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Uh, Being a husband and parenting is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Um, but when I went through it, it was extremely helpful. I mean, when you're looking at running a business while in college, managing school, just having to sort all those different aspects out in your life at the same time, it was extremely helpful. And I mean, the relationships I found, it's funny looking back at the people that did that and just how successful they've been and where they've gone in their life. Like it was very beneficial. I can tell you now, I hate painting. I do not want to paint. I don't enjoy it. We made good money, but it was just not something I wanted to do long term. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it was more the skills that you learn along the
yeah,
way from running the painting business as opposed to the actual trade
yeah.
of painting.
But funny on
Yeah.
that, I had lucked out. The first guys I hired to paint were these Irish guys in Santa Barbara over the summers. It would fill up from people from Ireland, and they'd just go there to party. And I hired these three guys, and they showed up, and they were still hungover. And one of them fell off like a balcony or a ladder. I forget which one it was. And then they broke for lunch and never came back. I was like, all right. And so I ended up hiring this girl, and she was a phenomenal painter. And then she's like, hey, my boyfriend's getting out of jail. Do you think we could hire him as well? And I hired them, and they were phenomenal. They did all my jobs for me. And they just did high quality work, so I didn't have to worry about it. And so I could just go to find the business or just go enjoy the beach. And I'd send paint supplies to the property. I'd meet with the owner when it started and meet with them at the end to collect the check. And it was pretty stress free. So
Sounds like such a
it worked
good
out.
introduction into the world of business.
Yeah.
I kind of want to follow up on what you said there. So I was fortunate to get to know a lot of Doug's friends through the College Works painting businesses, and I do totally agree with you. You look back now, and you're like, wow, all these people. I can think of like 6 or 7 just off the top of my head. They're all right now. Fast forward 20 years, like all very successful people. So I was trying to think. Do
Yeah.
you think that it was that people with that type of skill set were the ones that wanted to go get that experience? Or do you think that experience helped people get to the next level earlier on in their lives?
I think it's probably both. I mean, if you're wired that way to want to go knock on doors and to grow a business and to be an entrepreneur, you're wired a little different. And so I think it's people that are already more predisposed to wanting to be that way, and then also helping them develop the skills earlier on to build off of. But I think if you took somebody that had no interest in doing that and you're trying to force them into that, they might pick up something. But there's some people that want to be entrepreneurs and be a boss, and there's other people that are, want to be a worker and be employed. So I don't think you could have taken somebody. I think they would have learned something if they tried to do it. But I mean, a lot of people that try to do that internship don't make it because it's not easy.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
I was just going to say on that one point from being inside the company and actually, moving up and working as a district manager. I was shocked. I did the internship first year, and I saw that the people that were with me on day one of the internship weren't necessarily there in the summertime. All those people that started the
Mhm.
internship, and then when I moved up my second year as a district manager, and found out that the attrition was actually like
Yeah.
80%, and only 20% who start actually finish it. That was where I really had my eyes um, open wide and going, man, I just kind of thought when I started, like, there's no way I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
There's no way I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be really hard. And I think it exceeded like how my expectations as far as how hard it ended up being. But in my mind, like I just decided from the beginning and the get go that nothing was going to cause me to not finish and run a successful company in that first year.
Yeah. And I think that mindset's everything because
Yeah.
if you have a plan B, you'll fall to it. Whereas if you don't have that
Right.
plan B, it's like, hey, I have to make this work. I have no other choice. I have to succeed. And I think that's how I've always done everything in my life. Like I have to do this. Um, and I think that's what's helped me be successful at some of the different things that I've done.
Yeah, and it's so fortunate that you guys were able to get into something that gave you such a broad and diverse experience of business. You guys were doing like door to door sales, which I think is probably one of the more difficult things to do because it's both psychologically challenging and physically challenging. I mean, Doug was doing it around Pasadena in the summer when it was 100 degrees outside, and I went out there a few days with them. So it's hard to get doors slammed in your face. It's hard to have people be upset with you when all you're trying to do is, sell painting their house. And
Yeah.
and then the other side of then you guys were running the payroll, you were managing people, you were hiring painters, you were getting human resources in there, and then you were
Yep.
operationally trying to plan things out in advance. I think all of those little pieces really can lend themselves well. And you guys got it so early. You were in the middle of college. And then you were
Yeah.
also balancing that with doing school. So we're learning all this multitasking. I think it's really is, it was a kind of a life changing moment for me seeing Doug really take that on. And I think he kind of had a paradigm shift in that process where he's like, I'm having a ton of fun in college. He was probably having a little too much fun for part of it. And I was really jealous. And then there was really that paradigm shift where he started sacrificing pieces of that fun and finding the balance that you can both have fun while
Yeah.
doing the micro steps to set yourself up for success in the future. Success can kind of be this thing that you're kind of chasing, and how fast you get there is the pieces you're building to kind of get your foundation there. And I saw Doug
Yeah.
taking those steps to sacrifice. I'm going to go knock on doors today instead of going to the beach with my friends. I'm not going to stay out until 4 a.m. I'm going to go to bed at midnight so I can wake up and do this. Those are small micro choices that he was making on a day-to-day basis that really like slowly built up. And then he ran a successful business for, what'd you do, 2 or 3 years, Doug?
Yeah, I did it for 3 years.
Yeah. So it's just, I think it's really amazing that you guys were able to get into that. And I
Yeah.
think it set up a really
I
cool
agree.
foundation. I was the same way. I was in college and I was working at front desk at a hotel, and I got really fortunate that it was a small property. So I was like working at the front desk, learning customer service. Then I was working in housekeeping, managing the people there, learning inventories. Then I did sales and marketing, and then the GM. I got more financial background, and I think those little pieces to be able to fully understand business is what really kind of set me up a little earlier. My next step after that, when I worked for Starwood, I was the 23-year-old or 24-year-old sitting in a room of 40-year-olds because
Yeah.
I'd grinded all the way through college. It kind of gave me a little head start. And I think that's something we like to get across in this podcast is those micro sacrifices you make can help you get to where you want to be faster, but they have to be conscious and they have to be planned out so that like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm giving some things up. So it sounds like you had a lot of those types of things. Is that something you struggled with when you first started doing it, or you were able to easily walk right into that?
I don't think I really struggled with it. I've always been pretty efficient. I've always been able to get certain, I'd say, more done in less time than the average person. So I've been able to try to have my cake and eat it too. So I don't think I really struggled with that. If I have a goal, I make sure that that is done first, and then everything else is ancillary on what I can get done. So wouldn't say that's something I struggled with. I think that one just kind of came naturally, which is interesting because when I was younger, my brother was a hard worker, but I was always the lazy one. And so I don't know at what point that switched. I don't know if it was at College Works. I've never actually analyzed that. Um, but I worked hard in sports and things along those lines. School came a little bit more easy. But when it came to like yard work and chores, like I would do whatever I could to get him to do it.
Nate was nowhere to be found when it came time to mow the
Oh
mow the
man, mow
yard.
the yard or pick up dog poop. It was like oh yeah, I picked it up. Or I just scoop it and throw it over the neighbor's fence, things like that. But he was always a lot harder worker, and so I don't know at what point it switched. But then I think that's became one of my strengths is just working hard at whatever that task is that I'm trying to achieve.
I think it'd be really beneficial for the audience to know what exactly it is you do now, and if you can kind of talk about what your job is and how that's sort of worked in your lifestyle that you were looking for.
Yeah, so I'm a financial advisor now, so I manage about 200 households, 200 families, their wealth. My job is to help understand what their goals are, their short term, long term financial goals, life goals, and then just help them put a plan in place to ensure that they achieve it. And then walk alongside them while they're doing it to help them reach their goals. A lot of times people don't think about what it is they want to do. I mean, I've had couples sit with me that are, married 30 years, getting ready for retirement. They've never discussed what they want to do in retirement. One wants to, retire on a ranch in Kansas, and the other wants a house at the beach, and it's like becomes more of a marriage counseling, session. But I find it extremely rewarding because my job is just to help people fulfill their goals, and I get to use a lot of what I've learned over the course of my life to I think has helped me, you know, be better at this job. So that's I'd say in the 20,000 foot view of what it is that we do. Obviously, there's other nuances, but that's kind of the main general.
I love it.
And I know, Nate, when you first started in the business, it was really difficult. I view it as one of the hardest things for a young person to go to an older, wealthy household and talk to these folks that have, are late stage in their career, that have amassed a lot of wealth, and tell them, hey, let me manage that for
Yeah.
you when you're just getting started in the business. So I've always looked at it and viewed it as one of the most difficult, especially on the front end in the beginning. So how long, talk to us about, kind of the struggles you had starting
Yeah.
out when you entered the industry, and at what point did you start to feel like you had achieved some level of freedom relative to the normal 9 to 5?
So in this industry, and the numbers could be slightly different now, but it's 90% of the people that pass the Series 7, which is what you need to trade and sell stocks. 90% of people who pass the Series 7 are out of the industry within 5 years. So if you think of it like an attorney, when they pass the bar, 90% of people that pass the bar don't stop being attorneys. They might change their focus, but 90% leave the financial industry. So that's tough. But a lot of that is just how the system's set up. I mean, it's set up to really weed people out. When you join a company, they kind of teach you what you need to do. They work you, it's rough hours. It's really competitive, really cutthroat. And after 2, 3 years, you're like, forget it. I'm done. And then they keep your book of business. And so it almost benefits them to have push you out. Um, so that's one of the reasons why it is so tough. With me, it's interesting because when I started, I actually grew my clientele by going door to door, just like I did with College Works Painting, and saying, "Hey, I'm a financial advisor. I have an office down the street. If you have any questions, give me a call." And it was just a real soft. I wasn't trying to hard sell anybody. And just in doing that and walking in a suit, because in College Works it was a polo, a white cotton polo, um, and doing it in a suit, people aren't used to seeing somebody in a suit come to their door. And so it generally would lead to more questions. And they just say, "Oh, well, who are you working with now? Oh, you aren't working with anybody?" And they say people change jobs every 4 years. That means if I knock on 100 doors, 25 of those people are going to have a 401k rollover that they got to do something with. If they aren't currently working with somebody, then that was just kind of low hanging fruit. So that's how I built it. I did that for about 2 years, a year and a half, and that built up enough clientele where I didn't have to do that. And now I'm providing a good service to these people. They're referring me to their friends and family. And since then, it's just been all referral based. So I haven't had to go out and really, I don't say really market, but I haven't had to try to find clients. They find me each month.
That's super interesting. We had a stat from one of our last guests that was kind of similar, that blew me away to the one you just said. I think they were saying something about people who do the testing to be real estate agents, that like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like 90 something percent of them were like out after a few years. It's just, it really is incredible to me. What is it that you think sets the what you said was 95%? What is it that sets that 5% apart? Is it a skill set, mindset, what balance, and what do you think you specifically helped you pass everyone?
It's a mindset. It's that not giving up. It's not having that plan B. If you do this, because so I went through and tracked my numbers, and it was I had to knock on 119 doors to get one yes. So once you understand that, I know I'm going to get 118 doors either where people don't answer, tell me no, call the cops, do something. But I just have to keep going because once I hit that 119th door, I know I'm going to get a yes. And so I only need a few yeses each month, but I got to hear a lot of no's to get to it. So you got to be okay with being told no and realizing that I can only help people that want to be helped. And then of that group, I can only help people that want to be helped by me. And then of that group, I can only help people that want to be helped by me now. So it's a very small number, but the reward is huge. I mean, similar to real estate agents, I mean, where they get one deal, that's a big chunk. It's just they got to find that one deal to get it. And it's similar for me. What's nice with my industry is once I have that client, they're pretty much my client for life unless I screw something up or I don't do something right or they don't like me or just something changes in their situation. So once you build your clientele, you have that. Now it's no longer hunting, it's farming or servicing my current clientele. And then it grows organically that way. But I think it's all mindset. Um, I, I, I do a lot of training for newer advisors and experienced advisors with their company now. And it's like you see people that have the skill set, that have it, but they might just be missing that drive or desire. For me, I just started a new family. I had to provide. I had a wife. I had a son on the way. Like I have to provide. I didn't have an option to fail. And then we had our second child 13 months after our first one. So I really had to provide. And so when you have that motivation, it if it would have just been me single, you know, I don't
In the
yeah, in
RV?
an RV, like I don't know if I would have been as successful. I mean, I probably would have because I would have had all the extra time to be even more successful instead of trying to do it. But it's when you have that motivation, properly motivated. I mean that's a big deal. That gets you through all the rough
Yeah, I
times.
don't want to glance over the fact I thought this was really interesting. Just you tracking the number of doors that you went to and knowing, all right, well, if I do this many doors, I think that'd be a really good recommendation for people that are starting out on their grind. And I think it'd be interesting. I don't know if you tracked it over time, like over your first
Yeah,
6 months, maybe it was 150 doors you had to go to. And then as you got better and you really honed your craft, then it got down to
yeah,
119 or whatever.
it definitely dropped. That was my final number. But what I ended up realizing is that I was looking at the neighborhood. So if you're knocking in track homes, there's a certain demographic or amount of money that somebody might have in a track home. Well, I was getting almost too many clients, but they weren't necessarily the right ones. So I went to a much more upscale neighborhood where it took me longer to knock on 119 doors because everybody's driveways were really long and their properties are more spread out. But it was actually still that same number at 119. It's just when I got that yes, it was a much bigger yes. And so that was helpful. But yeah, my numbers were actually closer to 150 when I started, and then it slowly tracked, but it stayed pretty steady at that 119. But yeah, if I didn't do that, now it feels just defeating because you keep hearing no. But if you look at your numbers and you actually track it, now it's like okay, I know that this is what's going through. So I might hear 300 no's, but then I'll end up getting three yeses in a row. You know.
Yeah, those hot summers walking with Doug, I feel like I knocked on like 400 doors and got one yes. I think I did it for a few. I did it for a few days. I think I only got one sale for Doug, and it ended up being like
No,
the worst customer he ever had.
it was the worst customer, but you got me quite a
Oh
few
man,
actually. So I got to give you credit. But Nate, I like how you broke it down by the numbers and doing the math on it. When you kind of cut it up into bite-sized pieces like that, it does feel more attainable, and you are working more towards that goal instead of just being out there and experiencing all this failure. And I think if you don't do what the approach it from the way that you're approaching it, it makes it much more likely that you'll quit and give up because you're like, man, I can't deal with another slam door in my face. I remember actually at College Works, they kind of taught us to do that. That was part of the training where they'd say, okay, you got to knock on this many doors, get this many leads, then you'll get this many estimates. And this is your conversion rate on
Yeah.
those estimates of the number of jobs that you're going to book for the summertime. So you've reached what I'd consider a very comfortable place now in your career. It sounds like, and you have a little bit more freedom to spend time with your family and friends. And let's go back to a little bit less comfortable time before all the success. So you did really well. You had a ton of success at College Works. I remember saw that firsthand. When you left College Works, I think your first job from there was Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, so I went to the Golden State Warriors. It was right, and if you remember, it was right before Kevin Garnett went to Boston. And so when I got hired, it was the Golden State Warriors were looking at potentially getting Kevin Garnett, which would have just been huge. But they had just made the playoffs for the first time since 1993. So, and it was Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, that whole group. Don Nelson was the coach. But so when I got hired on, everybody was just on pins and needles waiting. Are we going to get Kevin Garnett? Because if we did, you're selling season tickets. We sell out. You do really well. Like you don't even have to be good at your job. People are calling you. But at that time, we didn't obviously get Kevin Garnett. He went to Boston. Um, and they drafted, I think it was Marco Bellinelli. I forget who else they got, but
Not
it
Kevin
was not
Garnett.
Kevin Garnett. Um, but now we're selling season tickets, to other than them making the playoffs right then. they hadn't made it since '93 and hadn't had an All Star since '97, Latrell Sprewell, and I'm trying to convince somebody to buy season tickets, and I took the job because they're like, oh, it's all warm leads, and so to me, a warm lead was like, hey, somebody who wants this, I just got to call and close it. To them, a warm lead was anybody who had been to a Warriors game in the last 10 years who bought a ticket off Ticketmaster. So we're given this role of just names and addresses. So I'm calling a guy from New Jersey who flew out here and saw one game, and I'm trying to sell him season tickets. So it was definitely difficult in that sense. But again, led to getting told no a whole bunch, and still getting some yeses. The perks of that job were great. You're at all the games. Your job is basically know more about sports than anybody you talk to, and you just it was there was a lot of fun, a lot of great people there. Um, it's interesting now, still seeing some of my friends that are still with the Warriors now that they're under new ownership and all the success they've had. That next year is when they drafted, Steph Curry, and I remember everybody was like, "Oh, he's just like Monte Ellis. Why did we draft him?" And it's like, oh, that worked out. So, but yeah, it was really fun, just going to the games and having that experience. But it was not something I saw myself doing long term. I wanted to be in sports. That was always my dream, my goal out of college. Had a sports management minor, but once I did it, it was like it's not what I wanted to do.
I was just gonna say, I remember so clearly, Nate, having you call me up because we were super tight at the time after doing College
Yeah,
Works painting together, and you're like, "Man, it's fun up here." A lot of what you just said, you told me, you're like, "It's cool. I don't see a long term
yeah,
fit for me here with the Warriors doing the season ticket thing. What are you doing down there? Can you get me on?"
yeah. And then
Take
I
it from
think
there.
like a few weeks later, I got hired down there. I was the 37th employee, I believe, for
Yeah,
that firm, that asset management company in Orange County. And I think within a year, we were at 660 employees. It was just
yeah, something like
insane
that.
growth. Like they could not grab enough office space, but that was probably the hardest. I mean, hardest I've worked. I remember one time the most I worked was 105 hours in 1 week at that company. It was just insane hours. I mean, the the abuse that they put on us in terms of the amount of time we had to work. Like, oh, you're going home for Christmas? No, you're not. You got to get back in here and do some work.
Nope.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I again learned a lot. That was in working that hard. I realized I never wanted to work that many hours ever again. I put in some time. I learned it, but I did not want to do that for the rest of my life.
So was it a conscientious plan to go the financial advisor role? Can you sort of talk about that transition?
Not at all. I After I left the asset management company that I worked at with Doug, I actually started a nonprofit, and did that, a 501(c)(3) that fed low income families using wild game meat. So we would hunt for 6 months a year, over the Western U.S., archery hunting, and then we would take those animals, keep them in the same locations, and give them the meat to the food banks or churches and things like that. But that obviously wasn't really paying bills. That was just kind of more of a passion, and it was fun, and I didn't have any responsibilities, so I could do it. And I was actually getting my MBA at the time from Biola, and I was just sitting down eating with a colleague, and just kind of asking him about his life, and I've always taken an interest in how people get to where they're at, and just out of the blue, he goes, "Man, you should really be a financial advisor." I'm like, "Really?" And so he actually got me an interview with his financial advisor, and then I was like, "Man, this is great." All right, so I called up a few of my friends that I knew were financial advisors, and when I was talking to one of them, he's like, "Nathan, I've been trying to get you to come and do this for
Ha.
years." And I'm like, "What?" I couldn't remember a single conversation where he had actually told me he wanted me to do this or whatnot. But it was just one of those things where it wasn't the right time. If I would have had this opportunity younger, when I was more responsible, it wouldn't have worked out. But having the proper motivation, the family, kids on the way, like I needed all those things. One, to just make me grow up, and then I got started with the firm I'm at now, and it's been great. So, but that's how it happened. It was just a lunch, and somebody just throwing it out there, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. And now that I'm in it, I'm so fortunate. Like I love this industry and what it offers, what it provides. I think it's one of the smartest careers you can get into just based off of that words that residual where every year when I bring in new clients, you're just building on top of what you've already done. It's not like mortgage where you have to go out and hunt and find it every single year. Every month you're starting back at zero. Every month when I turn the lights on, my office is generating this much, and each new client is just going to continue to go up. And it's I sold alarms one summer for about 2 months, door to door alarm sales in the Midwest, and talk about just shady people. I mean, that industry, they they will lie to again, generalization, but the people I was around would just say anything to get the sell. Very good at the door salespeople. But I heard one guy say, "Oh, 80% of break-ins come through the back window, so you need this glass protector." And then the next door, "Oh, 80% of break-ins happen to the front door, so you need this." And I'm like, that does not add up. He's just throwing out, making up, statistics.
There wasn't a lot of integrity that you were seeing among the people you were working with in that
Yeah,
field.
and so I've now knocking on doors that doing these shady sales as opposed to actually helping people achieve their life goals. One's so much more rewarding than what the other was. So
Yeah.
I wake up every day and I'm thankful. I love going into work. I wish I could get more time in work, but my family and wife keep me grounded. Okay, hey, what's important? This is important. Family first. And it's one thing to say family first. It's another thing to actually live it and do it. And that's one thing that I've tried to really do is just make sure family is first in everything. So if I have to reschedule an appointment, no matter how big, if my family needs me, they're going to be with me for the rest of my life. This client might not be. And so somebody gave me some advice in the beginning talking about, you're juggling, three different balls. One ball is a bouncy ball. That's your business. If you drop it, it will bounce back. Another ball is, say, a metal ball. That's your health. And if you drop that, it will get dented, but you can still keep going. Whereas your family is a glass ball. If you drop that, then it shatters and there's no recovery. So just make sure
Oh
that
wow.
you're always keeping that family one safe. So
Wow.
Protect that
That's a
glass ball.
gem right there. That's a
I like
gem.
it. I've never heard that one. So Nate, back before you had the family and the kids, and I know you were always, a family man and a good friend to me and all of our other friends. But what I always admired was all the different hobbies and interests that you had. As we talked about earlier, to the hunting, the archery. Um, we called you the bear hunter at one time. I think a lot of my friends still refer to you as the bear hunter. Um, I thought, the bodybuilding
uh-huh.
period of your life, which I think wasn't very long, but you really dedicated yourself and committed yourself to getting your body in peak physical shape to compete in this competition. And I think it speaks to the person that you are. Can you tell us a little bit about what went into that, all the training and all the sacrifices you had to make to be successful
Yeah,
there?
so my little brother in the fraternity opened up this hardcore bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman type gym in Long Beach, and he had always been a big health workout kind of nut. And so I was talking to him about it one day, and I said I would love to see kind of like the Biggest Loser idea, where they take somebody who's overweight, but they just kind of make them less overweight. I want to How overweight could I take somebody and then turn them into like a Greek god in the shortest amount of time, doing all natural without any kind of steroids or anything along those lines. And so we kind of came up with this idea, and the whole idea was more of a proof of concept to just say, hey, could we do this as a TV show? Would this be something that would work? And so we ended up running with it, and I got up to close to 250 pounds, and I'm 5'7", so that was pretty wide. And I hadn't really been working out much. And we started in January, and 4 months later, I was 185 pounds at like 5% body fat. And then I won the Southern California Natural Bodybuilding Championships. I parked the RV that I bought in College Works, 7 years earlier, still had it, old Betsy. And I parked it behind the gym. They controlled how much I ate, how much I slept, what I drank. And I basically just gave them my life for 4 months. And I mean, it was phenomenal. It was tough because I'm eating like 3 pounds of cod a day. And when I'm not eating cod, I'm eating chicken, and there's like no seasonings. And I'm eating, 2 pounds of spinach a day, and I'm just picking up spinach and putting mustard on it and eating it and trying to pretend and tell myself it was ice cream. It was awful. And the worst part with the cod is it actually, you start sweating it out, all the fish oils. And they could smell me, I kid you not, 100 yards away. I wouldn't even have walked through the door and they'd be like, Nathan's here. You just reek like fish. It was, so, I mean, there was a lot of just not, a lot about looking that way is so unhealthy, and that what you eat and what you have to do to your body to look that certain way. Um, but it was definitely one of the harder things I've done, just mentally trying to wake up each day to do these different things. And if it would have went on for 2 or 6 months longer, like I probably wouldn't have made it. But just having that finite goal and knowing I have to achieve this, I have to do these things. But yeah, we filmed the whole thing. We never did anything with the footage. It's still just sitting on a hard drive. One of these days, I'd love to have somebody just put that together, just as like a memory for myself of everything that we went through. Um, but yeah, that was definitely a difficult time, in that, but also really rewarding.
I think it's also super interesting your angle of doing the bow hunting. How did you get into that? And then can you transition how the 501c3 started?
Yeah, so that all started when we were at that company that me and Doug were working at. At that time, we grew up hunting. It's not that popular in California, but my dad took us hunting since we were young. Mostly it was you hiked in the hills with a gun. We never actually shot anything. It was just kind of an excuse to get out and walk around. But my brother was got more and more into it, and me and him spent a lot of time together. So he got more into bow hunting, learned more about it. We actually started a bow hunting website. We started getting sponsors that started, paying us to use their products and to showcase their products. And then we started just traveling around hunting a lot more. And it all started. We did the Sportsman's Channel wanted to do an event to feed. It was like 1,500 people on Skid Row, and they're supposed to work with the Safari Club International (SCI). And 2 weeks before, Safari Club backed out, and so they contacted us and they're like, "Hey, can you come up with 500 pounds of meat in the next 2 weeks?" And we did. We had some in storage. We reached out to some other hunters. I went and did a sheep hunt and shot a sheep for it. And then we went down there and fed 1,500 people on Skid Row. We had a mix of bear, boar, deer, elk, sheep, ground it all up, made these just amazing tacos. Got all the vegetables donated. They had fresh guacamole, and so that's where the idea first started. Like, wow, that was fun. That was rewarding. Why not do this all the time? So that's when we launched the 501c3. Was after that, and I was kind of doing that, and while I was still working at that asset management company. And then once I got let go from that asset management company because they went from 660 employees and they started dropping. Um, and I went and did that after that full time for a few years after.
That's awesome, dude. I think one of the themes I'm catching from all the different things you've done is your massive ability of salesmanship. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about what your philosophy is about sales.
Yeah, for me, sales is just getting to know somebody. It's talking with them, hearing their story, building rapport. I've never been a hard sales, ABC always be closing, just trying to, get the deal. It's much more, I'd say, softer. I feel like people like doing business with people that they like or that know that they genuinely care about them or want to know more about them or want to help them. So for me, that's more of an innate thing. It's not something that's manufactured. I genuinely want to know about people. I want to know their stories. And if I can find a way to help them or make them better off, then that's going to benefit them and me in that sense. So I'd say that's the main sales strategy that I use is just rapport building.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think that it's really cool that you've been able to build up, even all the way back into college, where you've just, you've put in massive time on this skill that you didn't even consciously plan out. But now you did sales at College Works. You did it with the with the distressed loan company that you're working with Doug and a few other spots. And now it's like, hey, I have this skill that lends itself perfectly with being a financial planner.
Yeah,
And you're obviously a really good person that is genuine and transparent, and you really do exude kind of trustworthy status, from my opinion. So I think all those
thank you.
it's amazing how all those things really lined up. The hard work of the early years, and once again, this gets back to like one of the themes of Find Your Freedom. Is there's so many different paths, sometimes planned and sometimes unplanned, but kind of putting in the work and
Yeah.
sort of honing the skill sets that you feel work best for yourself, can work out without even knowing it. And someone saying, "Oh, you'd be a great financial planner," and now look where you are.
Yeah.
But it wasn't by
Oh, I'm
accident.
so thankful for
It
that
wasn't by accident.
conversation.
Yeah.
So
What's the commission that guy gets off your book now?
whatever it is, it's not enough. So
No, it's
yeah,
really cool that that sometimes things work out just by so you had the salesmanship aspect, and now it seems like you're really good at the networking aspect also, and you maintain these relationships, and look how it kind of walked you into this opportunity, which is another thing that we kind of have with a lot of our guests.
yeah.
I consider you, Nate, as a guy who's led a very interesting life. You've become very successful in this field that you've dedicated your life to. And, what are some gems? You've already shared quite a few gems, I think, already today, but anything else for the younger listeners out there? Anything that you would have liked to have heard maybe early on in your 20s when you're trying to figure things out on your come up?
I think it's tough because if I look at what I would say to myself, I wouldn't have listened. I wasn't mature enough. I didn't care at that time. It was just I was living for the moment. And now I have so much greater purpose. So I think that's one of the biggest things that changed for me was just having that purpose greater than myself. But I've always, I think one of the things that's really helped me is I've always invested in myself, whether it be reading, continuing education, sales classes, things along those lines where I always want to be better than what I am. And I don't have to get, 1,000 times better in 1 year, but it's how you're talking about the micro steps that you can take and just reading this book, employing this one new strategy. And it's just learning those things. So I'm a perpetual learner. And I think if people can do that and they just keep learning, that's going to be, one of the biggest helps. I think it was Mark Twain that said, if you believe the same thing you believed 20 years ago, then you've just wasted 20 years of your life. So it's just that constantly evolving and growing and maturing, but not being afraid to spend money to learn these things. If somebody has a skill set that you want to learn, spend 500, spend 1,000, and how much more is that going to just help you in the future? So I think that's one of the biggest things. I've never been afraid to invest in myself to grow my learning, or my knowledge base.
I love that. Speaking of investments, what is, as a financial planner, is there some of the basics that you think that would be really good for the audience to hear?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest misconceptions with investing is everybody's trying to hit that unicorn because that's the sexy thing. That's the exciting thing of, hey, I bought Tesla at $25 and now it's, wherever it's at. But with investing, it's more just letting the compound interest do all the hard lifting. Just it's more important to have your money in the market and actually growing than it is what specific investment you're in. And if you can just let it sit and not pull it out when the market drops, how it is right now, and just keep putting more money in, compound interest is going to do all the heavy lifting for you. Everybody thinks my job's picking the best investments, and that's part of it. We do have to have top tier investments. You do have to have that because that's in a competitive nature that's important. But nobody knows which mutual fund is going to be the best 5 years from now. We can look back and say who was the best then. I can look and study their process and see who has the best process, who has a repeatable process. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the best 5 years from now. What's more important is that you're in that and you're on the roller coaster. The markets go up three, down one, up three, down one, not always in that order. When it goes down one, don't jump out. The only person who gets hurt on a roller coaster is somebody who gets off halfway through. So just stay on it. But I think that's the biggest thing is just let compound interest do all the heavy lifting and just make sure it's in some type of, growth type fund. That's more important than what specific fund.
That's smart. I think that's really good advice. One of the questions we like to ask all of our guests, which you can answer anyway, there's no right answer on, is how would you define entrepreneurship for you?
I think it's just being in control of my time. To me, my time is the most important thing. It's the one thing I can't ever get enough of, or I can't get it back. And so my dad was a small business owner, still is, um, over 50 years now, I think, in civil engineering land surveying company. So being raised in that and seeing that he never missed, any one of my sporting games, he drove on every field trip. It was always there. It was always present. Now he had to work a lot of hours, and he might have to work weekends and things like that. But he was always there, and he could control his time. So that's always been important to me, and I think that's how I would kind of view it, is being in control of how I spend my time. I don't have somebody tell me, "Hey, I have to do this," or "I got to do this by this time." It's up to me to choose my timeline, up to me to choose my goals, and it's up to me to make sure I achieve them.
I love that. It's a great answer. This is the podcast that we wish we would have had back in the day when we were working those corporate jobs and wanting a different opportunity, or when we were in college, not really knowing like what our future would look like and how we would want to design it. And I think that you've done a really good job illustrating today that the path can kind of wind lots of different ways. But what's most important is working on yourself, and some of those skills down the line will pay off if you put in the time and if you're assertive to take care of yourself and keep learning. So we're super stoked that that your life worked out so well. You were able to find your freedom, and we super appreciate you sharing the super interesting life that you have.
My pleasure.
Do you have any books or websites that you like to recommend that you've gotten a lot of value from?
I think one of the biggest ones, I don't want to say it's cliche, but in sales, Dale Carnegie, How to Win and Influence Friends. That one's good. I'd say that one of the biggest impacts was a book called Crucial Conversations. I think,
Oh, I love that
oh
one,
man,
Nate. You're speaking my
that one
language.
was that's one I want to reread every year. That's just like yes. So I think that would probably be my biggest one in terms of books.
That's great. I'm actually getting through that book right now.
Are you?
Doug passed that over to me, and I super
Yeah, that
appreciate
one's
it.
yeah,
I think I gave that one to Jonathan about a year ago, and he's getting through it
I
little
had
by
a
little.
couple other things I get in. I have this challenge where when I'm reading, my brain just starts going elsewhere, and my eyes are working it, and then I kind of have to get back. Like, what was the last thing I remember reading?
yeah,
That's why podcasting really works out so well for me, because I'm able to listen to things while I'm doing other stuff, and I'm able to absorb it
yeah.
better that way. But I think that book is so important. And Doug, I'm almost done with it, so I want you to know.
I actually, the first time I read it was on an audiobook, so you may want to try that. That might be
Speed up the
more up
process.
your more
Good,
alley.
good looking out.
Yeah. So Nate, I just want to say before we sign off here, I consider you a lifelong friend, and I appreciate you coming on with us. You're truly an amazing individual, um, and I feel very fortunate that we've had such a long-term friendship. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for coming on, and thank you for being such a
Oh
good
man,
friend.
my pleasure.
Oh, bro.
Thank you guys for having me.
Great gems today, Nate. Thanks so much.